They call me a public relations consultant, but I prefer to call myself a storyteller. Because actually, communications is about storytelling. And everything that you tell has its own story. Every brand, all companies, each leader, even countries, everyone has one sole objective. And that sole objective is to manage their reputation. Well, how do you manage reputation? You manage reputation by good storytelling. If you have a good story, at the end of the day, what is remembered is the story that you tell. And the impact of that story on your audience. There is nothing else. It wouldn't make sense to talk about stories. It wouldn't make sense to talk about ideas without talking about myself. So let me start with my story. This is me. I was a beautiful kid. Actually, I grew up in a family where all family pictures are dominated by women. I come from a family where my grandmother was brought up by her grandmother and her mother without a father figure. She was born in early 1910s, and she was one of the first users of the Turkish alphabet. In 1920s, she went all through Atatürk's revolutions. She had an astonishing story. Except from these, she was one of the first players on the Turkish opera. She had the role of an angel. She was up on stage, right in front of Atatürk and Rıza Şah Pahlavi. She was a working woman. She was a translator. And she loved going to the Republican Day balls. She wore lovely fancy dresses. And all through my childhood, I adored her dresses. It was the 75th celebration of Turkish Republic Day when there was a ball again, and we went there together with my grandma. I wore her dress. The person that you see over there with the pink dress is me, and we went there. She told all of her stories, everything, and I wrote an article. This clipping is from that article. It was published, and I really wanted to write a book about her. I wanted to write her biography. She never let me do that. It was right after her death when I learned why. She was an adopted kid, and she didn't let us know that all through her life. It was something huge. It was something deep for the family. She was my precious. I loved her. I loved her so deeply. And one of the things that I remember from her is she would tell me, even though being a very modern woman, she would tell me, Seçil, when your husband comes home from work, get dressed up, put on your red lipstick, put the best food on the table, and don't forget, tables are where families meet and connect. It was my first communications lesson. She was my role model and the first giver of the first communications lessons. It's all about connections. Well, it's not all about my family. I learned diversity from my family as well. Till the age of 2, my father raised me up. My mother was a working woman, and as a working woman, my father was in charge of taking care of me. It was very strange for 1970s in Turkey. It is still unconventional, but for those days it was really, really very strange. But it helped me to understand the diversity. Then my precious grandmother took over again, and she brought me up. There she is. My destiny of being among women's cycles, did not finish here actually. It was just the beginning. At the age of 11, I started Üsküdar American And at that time, it only admitted girls. So my teenage years was in a campus of 800 girls. Can you think of that? 800 girls in one campus. And every day, there was a story of one of us. It could be a heartbreaking story of a boyfriend. It could be an application for an Ivy League university. Whatever we talked about, it was sincere. We believed in each other, and we talked from our hearts. It was sincere. There was no prejudice from the listener, and there was nothing on the hidden side. It taught me one thing. If there is sincerity in communication, it's open communication. So miscommunication cannot be done. They told us, get up on stage. Here I am, up on the stage. Defend your rights. Talk about what you think out loud and never step back. This is how we were educated with 800 girls. Then the years of the college started. Nothing changed. At the university, I was studying sociology, and there were only 4 boys in our class. Only 4. And one of them is Teoman, a famous rock star in Turkey. I'm so sorry, but we don't have a picture together, so I cannot show it to you here. But the years of the college was actually the years of my life, because the years of the college are the years of the most joyful years of your life. It's not just because it's about having fun at the campus. It's not about just studying, but it's about meeting different groups of people, meeting different societies, different social groups. And when you meet with each different group, there's a different thought coming out of it. And you explain yourself to different groups. Then you convey your message to different ones. And you understand yourself, and you defend your rights. It builds your future. It shapes your future. So please enjoy these days. Well, during the years of the college, I also decided about my profession, and I started a PR firm. Public relations was a brand new profession for Turkey those days, and I wanted to be in it. I wanted to be in business of public relations, in business of communications. And my career continued. There's another picture of us here. My career continued in media. I was a Cosmo girl, and being a Cosmo girl was something fun to be. We were writing about all the unspoken things to liberalize other people's thoughts. Then I was an editor in one of the TV shows. It continued like that. But all those TV shows, one of them is Okan Bayülgen's Gece Kuşu. It's been like 20 years ago. But all these shows, we had guests. And our guests were opinion leaders, celebrities. And they came to our shows, and their idea was to impose their ideas to all the audience that we had. We were mirroring what they thought. Media years taught me one thing, an important thing to learn. If there is not a good story, there is no rating. If there is no rating, there is no program. So you have to start everything with a good story. The years passed by, and I had a real change in my life, because after 8 years in media, I started working for a corporate bank, a leading corporate bank of its time, and everything changed. Because now I was the youngest manager, I was not the only youngest manager, I was the only woman as a manager in a bank. It was a tough job. And I thought, if I worked hard, really hard, I could do it. I was working till midnight. Each day I was working till midnight. But it didn't work out that way. One day, When I was expecting for a promotion, my director invited me for dinner, and I thought, okay, it's time that I'm going to get the promotion. A perfect promotion is coming. It didn't work out that way. He said, Seçil, you're head of communications. Being head of communications means you have to be out listening to your audience. But what you're doing is you are at the desk. It doesn't work that way. If you don't listen to your audience, you don't know what they need. And if you don't know what they need, you cannot communicate. A very important lesson. Meanwhile, I got married. A new chapter of my life. I was a wife. And my husband was a very supportive and understanding person. He waited for long hours, long and long hours, for me to come from work. And my grandmother's advice did not work. I was never ready with my red lipstick on when he came. He always waited for me. At the same time, there was a change in the bank. The government overtook the bank. And we had, unfortunately, hundreds of employees who were laid off. And we had thousands of furious, I mean really furious clients. One of those clients came to the bank. They invited me to talk with him. We got on the elevator, and he put a gun on my back. He wanted his money. He wanted his money immediately, and he wanted to go up to the treasury floor. It was a lesson of crisis. When we talk about communications, there's also sad sides of it as well. And crisis is one of those tough sides. It happened. He got his money, and I'm still here, alive. But it didn't go so well for the bank. We were trying to meet with the investors and trying to convince them that this was all about the crisis, financial crisis in Turkey, and it would change. There was a very good past performance of the bank. They wouldn't listen. Because the bank has lost its reputation, and if you lose your reputation once, there is no way to regain it. So for years and years, that reputation couldn't be gained. My next position was in an investor bank, and I was in charge of investor relations and also communications. Foreigners taught me one thing. We were talking about the stories of the companies. We had huge presentations. I mean huge, I really mean huge presentations about the companies. We talked, and they asked questions about the countries. They all asked about Turkey, nothing else. Then I realized what is important is the setting. If there is not a setting, there is not a story. And if there is no setting, it becomes a fairy tale. And for the businessman, fairy tales does not mean anything. They want to hear about success stories, nothing more. Things changed. At the age of 30, I decided to have a baby. I was pregnant for my first son, Ali. It didn't work out well. I had a complication, and I was stuck in bed for 5 weeks without moving, still. I was having contractions. My doctor, my family, and my friends did not let me know that I was having contractions. Everyone behaved as if everything was normal. It wasn't. But it helped. When you perceive everything as if everything is normal, you behave normally. And I had my baby boy, healthy. I was a mother. A new chapter of my life has started. And a new chapter of my life continued because 19 months later, I had my second son, Alp. When I went back work from the maternity leave, there was a surprise. My position was terminated. So I need to make a huge change. After many years, I thought the best thing I could do was to become a volunteer. And I was a volunteer for an NGO called Darüşşafaka. It's 150 years of NGO, and its mission is to provide quality, I mean really quality education for underprivileged students whose parents are deceased. And this foundation for 150 years gives education to them in English and full board. Well, I was in charge of having a communication strategy, and I realized that there is one thing which is very, very important for them. It is trust. Because after losing your husband, someone comes and says, okay, we have a school over there, and get your kid to our school. You have to give trust to that. And that foundation did it for 150 years. I learned if there is a trust story, people come and believe in you. It worked. And there were more and more applications coming in every day, and millions of dollars of donations. I was successful. Being successful gave me the courage of being a woman entrepreneur. To give you the numbers, women entrepreneurs are quite rare in Turkey. There are 1.2 million of entrepreneurs in Turkey in general, and only 8% of that are for women. So I had a new mission. I had a new business going on and a new mission. I was going to work for the women who didn't have gender equality in work life and who was always stuck to the glass ceiling. Now I work with different companies, I work with NGOs, I give seminars, and I only believe that we can make a change if there is gender equality. And that will make a new understanding of communication. Beyond this, in my business, we started to work with conglomerates, huge companies, international brands. Now we run one of the largest CSR projects of Turkey. There are 6.5 million people that we are teaching financial literacy all through schools. And we're working with leaders, we're working with ministers, we're working with opinion leaders. All different groups of people have one thing in their common. They want to have their reputation, and the rule works for all of us. You have to have a good story. You have to understand your audience. You have to understand the needs of that audience. You have to be sincere to your audience. You have to create trust on your audience. And you have to have an impact on your audience. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And if you want to know about my story, I told you about six different Seçils, 6 different me's. Seçil as a girl, Seçil as a young woman, Seçil as a businesswoman, Seçil as a wife, Seçil as an entrepreneur, Seçil as an activist, whatever. All of them come to the same thing. Life is in circles. Every stop starts a new story. So please believe in the power of redefining stories. And if you believe in those redefined stories, I believe we will have a better communication. If you want to know the next chapter of my life, it's my sons and me. This is my story. You've been a part of it. Thank you for being one.